Yo, what is up, guys? Maybe crazy, maybe you didn't expect this, but I am back with a YouTube video. I've been really consistent with streaming on Twitch and stuff, and I wanted to try and post a bit more on YouTube. So I figured what better way to start off than work on a tier list video. So what we're going to be doing today is we're going to be going through all the restricteds in Regulation G. We're going to be talking through how good I think they are, obviously where I rank them. So we have S tier, A tier, B tier, C tier, and I'm going to just make it F tier. This is just like don't use it pretty much. It's basically just like it's a bad tier, right? So I'm going to be breaking down each restricted. The reason why I wanted to do this video separately, if you had been on my Twitch streams, you'll know that there was a VOD of me and a couple of other top players reviewing. That was about a week and a half ago, so I feel like a lot has changed since then, so now I can give a lot more accurate information. So that's what we're going to be doing today. So let's start off with Koraidon. So Koraidon is insanely strong right now in the metagame, and it's for a couple of reasons. Right now, what Koraidon does incredibly well is it sets Sun, and it puts on a lot of pressure with its ability. So its ability, or Orichalcum Pulse, I think I said it right, pretty much the way it works is it's able to consistently put on like a lot of pressure because of its damage boosting. So what this mon does, let me actually quickly put this here. Let's take Koraidon real quick. First off, it gets an attack boost from Sun being activated anyways, which is already insane because it means it's going to be doing a lot of damage. It typically runs Clear Amulet, and it also works really well with Collision Course, its signature move. Collision Course, the reason why it's so good is because it gets an extra damage boost when it's a super effective hit, and with Terra Fire Clear Amulet, it also gets a really powerful Flare Blitz or Flame Charge, and basically it makes this thing a huge threat because it already has a attack boost, right? So with the flame charge, now it's faster than almost everything. After one flame charge, you outspeed Calyrex, which is really big. And then also too, with Flare Blitz, you're putting a ton of pressure with like physical fire damage. So typically a lot of Koraidons have been opting for the Collision Course, Flare Blitz, and Flame Charge all in one, but it does have some other options like Bulk Up and Swords Dance, which is pretty cool. So Koraidon's a really strong Pokemon. It definitely has a lot of potential. It's definitely something I would expect to see around. In my opinion, it's actually probably an A tier Pokemon. Like at first I didn't think it was as good. I actually probably would put in the B tier, but I think it's actually just a way better Sunsetter than Groudon at this point, mostly because of its consistency, and its dragon and fighting typing is actually really good. It's able to resist Rillaboom, it's able to pressure Incineroar, and it's able to resist Urshifu's Surging Strikes, so it just has a lot of good qualities that are really nice. As well too, one thing I particularly really like about Koraidon is the fact that it can obviously continuously like exert pressure on Incineroar. Like even when Sun isn't set, like Collision Course does so much damage, it's able to put on a ton of pressure, right? Miraidon. So Miraidon's a little bit different. Miraidon's definitely worse than Koraidon is, and that's because right now Rillaboom is like one of the #1 Pokemon in the format, and being able to take away terrain from Miraidon is obviously a really good benefit for Rillaboom, but really awful for Miraidon. It doesn't mean Miraidon's unusable, but I definitely think the use cases for it are substantially worse, and you're normally going to be leaning more into the Koraidon style of play if you're looking for one of these new restricteds, just because it has more control over the board. With Hadron Engine, it's the same way that Koraidon ability works, in the same sense of like it gets a special attack boost when electric terrain is active, and it summons it as well. The problem is it's a lot harder for Miraidon to keep its boost. Typically you're going to see it running like Life Orb or like Assault Vest, typically giving you like either some kind of bulk with the AV or Life Orb just being able to exert a lot of pressure. Sometimes you see specs. It's kind of cool, but obviously there are some certain things that can hold it back. It does have a really good stat spread and really decent bulk, which is kind of why I think it's a good AV mon. The most successful builds for it have seemed to be like kind of these like weird balance teams, but they're kind of built around like spamming a lot of like sleep weeks, like Amoonguss weeks next to Miraidon, or like Pokemon that would like not want to get put to sleep. Overall, I'd say it has some potential. It probably could be explored a bit more. I think that Assault Vest set has definitely not been explored enough, so I'd probably put it in B tier. Terapagos. So Terapagos, when the format first started, I thought it was like an S tier Pokemon. I do think it has certain things that holds it back. So Terapagos is really, really strong. If you guys don't know, it basically has 3 abilities, only 2 that are super relevant. In its first form, the Terrestrial form, it basically has better multi-scale. So when any attack goes into it, it halves the damage of that attack with a type resist, which is different than regular multi-scale. What regular multi-scale and Shadow Shield do is it still takes the type matchup into account. This one distorts it and obviously makes it so that you take half half effectiveness from the type. So it's a lot better because you're able to actually resist the hit, right? As well too, like this ability means that it can exert like a lot of like staying power, and if it runs a toxic set, you can use it differently where you're not necessarily just using it for the purpose of just setting up Calm Mind sweeping. You can also spam toxic and just kind of recycle your Terra Shell with Rillaboom and Incin. I really do like Terra Starstorm as its signature move. It's 120 base power, 100% accurate move, and then it can change to Stellar Terra if you decide to Stellar Terra, right? So there's a lot you can do here. Pretty strong tool. I think it's a really it's a very versatile mon for sure. I think that where it gets held back is sometimes it's very slow, so it can get outpaced, and also Koraidon and Zamazenta, which are a big meta Pokemon right now, or at least like they're around, can give it trouble. So for me, honestly, it goes down to A, but it does have a lot of consistent tournament performances, so I feel like it's definitely a Pokemon you have to respect, right? Mewtwo, that thing's just F tier. It's super power corrupt. Expanding Force Niche doesn't even matter because you have Calyrex. Nothing Mewtwo does, speed or special attack wise, is special. Lugia to me is a C tier restricted. It's basically usable, but like it's so slow and passive with like the Aeroblast stuff that doesn't really do anything. Like I've seen some like Calm Mind Lugias obviously that people try to spam, but it's just really not that great. Like I think if you're going to use it or you like have to use it, you're gonna use the Recover, Calm Mind, Aeroblast, and one coverage moveset. I actually like Terra Blast plus Terra type because to be honest, Psychic and Flying coverage is kind of redundant in what it checks, and you could probably get a lot more value. I even thought Terra Dark, Terra Blast could be kind of cool because you could at least hit Calyrex, but even then it's still not a phenomenal Pokemon. Same with Ho-Oh. Ho-Oh's just not great. Ho-Oh actually has less usage even than Lugia. Ho-Oh maybe can like sit in front of, I don't even know what it can sit in front of. Like it can sit in front of Koraidon, I guess. It's like, it's not even that great into Calyrex because Calyrex Ice can just Glacial Lance it, and then Calyrex Shadow, I mean, it has a really good special defense, so maybe if you're running an AV set, you could do something with this. But you need a lot of Pokemon around it that like support Ho-Oh's kit, and like to be honest, it's a very committal Pokemon where like you don't really have the tools to support it probably as much as it needs it, so not super great. Kyogre. So Kyogre is good. I actually still think it's an A tier Pokemon. I originally put on an A tier in the previous list I did on stream. I still think it's around there actually. I think it's a bottom of A for sure. It's not. Maybe I put high B now, because the problem with Kyogre is honestly is just Koraidon is really good into it, and also too Raging Bolt and Rillaboom are everywhere. But there are a lot of Kyogre builds that are effective. Like there were 2 in top 8 of the most recent Victory Road tournament, and I believe it like 2 or 3 cut another Limitless tournament that I got second place in, with like 380 people or something. So there's definitely a lot of things you can do there, right? But I don't know. I feel like Kyogre, it's still doing the standard water spout stuff. The Calm Mind set hasn't really taken off as much as one would think. It's usually kind of just doing Kyogre things. Doesn't necessarily make it bad, but it is kind of like always having to be partnered with for a draft, and it's also almost always with Tornadus, so it's a little bit linear in what it does, but it does have some options, so I can't completely discount them on. I do think though that like there are some other restricteds that do stuff a bit better in the metagame. Groudon, it's really unfortunate. Like I don't want to put it in C tier because I don't think that's fair. Like Groudon's not near as bad as like Lugia or these guys, but it's got to be like bottom of B. Like this restricted honestly is like really disappointed me in this format. Like even Miraidon I think's been more consistent than Groudon, which is kind of crazy. Maybe I'm like lying a little bit on that one, I don't know, but like Groudon just doesn't feel good, and I'll explain why. Like I think Game Freak kind of low-key did Groudon and Kyogre hella disservices, because the thing is, right, before, if you had Groudon with like 100% accurate blades with like Primal Groudon or something, it would probably be really broken. But like now Groudon is just like Groudon, and there are restricted to have way more broken abilities and like signature moves. Like the Callies can't miss their signature moves, nor do I think they should, by the way. I don't think any restricted should have a signature move that misses. They're restricted, they're meant to be strong. I think you want to remove variants. But like, why would I use Groudon with Clear Amulet, right? With the Precipice Blades and the, like, you could do the bulk up set, which is the most common set that you'll typically see on the Clam, like, Groudon sets, when I could use Koraidon. And you might be like, okay, but they have different coverage, but, like, what benefit genuinely am I getting from using Groudon versus Koraidon? Because, like, with Koraidon's natural typing, I wall Fire, Water, Grass teams, pretty much, besides close combat, and I'm able to go first. I get an attack boost in Sun. I get a consistent option that always kills Incineroar. Not only does Groudon's Precipice Blade not even kill like bulkier Incins, but also like if it just misses, you lose. So it's like, why wouldn't I just use Koraidon in that case, right? Another thing that can be particularly difficult, I think, for Groudon is just the fact that like its speed tier is a little slower, so a lot of the restricteds outspeed it. And like it does have decent bulk, but like it doesn't have like a gimmick to like kind of mitigate the risk of using blades anymore. And it doesn't have a huge return on investment when there are other restricteds that are doing stuff really well. So to me, honestly, like I think Groudon has to be lower B. Like it's still better than like obviously, you know, your Lugias or your Ho-Ohs, but it's not really impressed me that much, to be honest. Rayquaza, so Rayquaza had like two top cut placements. Clear Amulet Rayquaza is like the only way it gets run. Dragon Ascent's actually a really scary coverage move in this format. Like it can put on a ton of pressure onto teams. So I feel like you actually kind of have to respect Ray a little bit in your builder. Like not that much, but like you have to at least have it in mind. Like how am I going to be like Dragon Ascent Clam Ray? I'd probably put it in the B tier. Like I think it's probably like the gatekeeper for the B tier, just because it has like some good tools that it can leverage, but for the most part, not super relevant, right? So not something you'll see super often. Okay, Origin Form Dialga. It's like I feel like I need like a lower tier, right? I feel like I need a like worse at a row below. We're gonna have another D tier. We're also gonna change the colors because I actually hate the colors on this list. I think they're incredibly ugly. This will be green. This will be blue because there's B tier. This will be, I don't know, red. No, red's the top one. This will be pink. And then D will be like yellow, and then F is just bad, right? Okay, so in my opinion, right, I think Ho-Oh, Dialga, and these guys for sure like deserve to be like here, right? Like I think in general these guys are all fine, like they're usable and they're not like the worst things you could ever use. Like Dialga, honestly, like I don't know any reason why you would use regular Dialga like over this. Like there's actually no benefit besides not having to use the same item. But like frankly, like it's just like worse. Like Dialga is just worse than the Origin Form Dialga, right? The Palkia ones have differences that I think put them both in like C or like high B. But like to be honest with you, like I just feel like the like there's no distinguishing between these two that's really beneficial. The only thing is that Dialga can run an item. That's literally the only reason why you wouldn't want to use the Origin Form Dialga. But besides that, like this Dialga has like a lot better benefits because it has better bulk, right? And it just is like, or better special attack, I think it is. It's like something like optimizing one of its stats. It takes out of attack. Like that doesn't matter for Dialga, right? And then with Palkia, it's literally just like Palkia wants to be a Trick Room setter with its regular form, and with this one, it wants to be a fast attacker, right? So you pick and choose which one you want. Giratina, unfortunately, D tier. I mean, it's not like the worst. Like I think the Giratinas aren't like the F tier restricted. Like they're not like horrendous, but they're pretty bad, right? There are differences between the Giratina forms. I do think Origin form is probably better as a whole, just because it's a bit more offensive, which like you kind of need in the format. Like Stally Giratina is not really going to be winning any tournaments or anything. But, you know, I mean, hey, like, it exists, I guess. Reshiram, to be honest with you, I feel like Reshiram C tier, like, I think having a strong fire type restricted actually isn't the worst thing in the format. Also, like, a small thing to note is that, like, it actually is not horrendous into Koraidon. The fact that it has, like, quad resist to Flare Blitz from Koraidon and then also has, like, fire moves that it can fire off along with dragon coverage that, like, a lot of the format wouldn't appreciate makes it, like, not, like, the worst thing ever, but it's definitely not, like, amazing, right? I can't say as much for its counterpart Zekrom. Zekrom's basically a mon where like its entire niche was pretty much dedicated around being able to beat Kyogre, and like that was the reason why you'd run in the format. And like right now, Kyogre isn't even popular enough to justify that. Plus, it like has losing matchups into like most of the other restricteds, so there's actually no benefit to using Zekrom, unfortunately. Kyurem Ice, also D tier mon probably. I'd say like you get the loaded dice icicle spear scale shot set, but like that's not even that good. And like, why would I just not use Baxcalibur at that point and not use my restricted slot, right? Frankly, like it doesn't really warrant the usage over a restricted slot. Like I don't think it's like I gotta clarify too. Like F tier is like unusable. D tier is like you could still use it because it's a restricted, but it's probably not that great, right? And then yeah, I mean I don't know. I'm not very impressed by these restricted, to be honest. They just don't really appeal to me. Kyurem-White. Kyurem-White I actually still think is really good. I actually think Kyurem-White is better than Lugia. I just think less people have used Kyurem-White. Like, I think snow stuff is actually really annoying into certain teams. That being said, I don't think it's like a top tier strategy or anything, but I do think Kyurem would like provide more value than like any of these other restricteds in this tier. So for me, that's like good enough to put it here. Also, special attack is like monstrous, so it actually like does a ton of damage. There's a couple different sets that probably haven't been explored with it. Doesn't mean Kyurem's like going to be meta changing or anything, plus like it's going to be used, but I mean, hey, like it's something for it, right? Next up, regular Kyurem, bad, bad, bad. Obviously, Solgaleo. So Solgaleo's a weird one for me, honestly. Like, I just feel like its matchups into like Groudon isn't great, which doesn't really matter because Groudon's not that good. Koraidon's horrendous because it can just flare blitz. Into Kyogre, not great. It's like fine into Terapagos, but doesn't really do anything back into it. And then into Cali Shadow, it's bad, and then into Calyrex, it's fine. So it's like it's okay. Like, I probably would put it in like C tier just because like I don't think it's as bad as the other one. To be honest with you, I might even put the Palkia forms down here because I kind of feel like they don't really deserve as high placements. Like, I feel like the Dialga offers something with telepathy. Maybe you could argue that the Palkia forms deserve a bit higher. I'd probably put them over this, and I'd probably put Dialga like here. But yeah, there's just not too much benefits in my opinion to Solgaleo right now, right? Even versus Duskmane, like I think they're both like kind of mid. I would say honestly between both, like they both have different benefits. So Duskmane has Prisoner Armor, which actually works really well with terrestrialization. You can actually, take advantage of that to maybe, you could like cheese stuff with like terrestrial resist something, or like not resist something but take less damage from something. And then clear body basically on Solgaleo is nice because you could do bulldoze gouging fire with it. So like there are some gimmicks there, whereas like the D tier mons are just strictly outclassed, or they just do something worse than like other Pokemon. Lunala to me is like a B tier mon. I feel like it kind of makes up like the bottom of B. I think the Meteor Beam set is obviously its best set. I would put it over Groudon for sure, and maybe over Miraidon. They're kind of tied. Like I feel like Miraidon and Lunala are kind of in the same category of things. Lunala has like some really good tools. Like Shadow Shield is really cool, Meteor Beam's really cool, and Moongeist is really cool. Obviously, like it has good pressure. It also runs Terra Fairy Moonblast sometimes now, and its access to Wide Guard is really beneficial in a restricted format. Its biggest issues are the fact that first off, Incineroar's everywhere, but you could say that about Cali Shadow, and it's like basically an S tier mon, and also like Meteor Beam gives you a direct pressure to that. I think it's the fact that other Cali Shadow are just in the format, right? Like, or that Cali Shadow is in the format, so it pressures Lunala. But honestly, like besides that, it's pretty strong, I'd say. Like it's a good B tier restricted, I should say. It's not like top tier, but I think it's pretty relevant. Duskmane Necrozma, so you can run like a power. So like the reason why you'd run this over Lunala is literally only if you're running like Psy Spam Trick Room. That doesn't necessarily make it like super great anyways, but it does also have a higher special attack, which is kind of cool. It does have a little bit worse bulk across the board, but it has Prism Armor as well, so you can take advantage of some terrestrialization. You can maybe Terra to Psychic and do like Moongeist, Expanding Force, Meteor Beam, and Trick Room, right? And then you can basically take advantage of the Power Herb Meteor Beam to get really powerful expandings off in Trick Room. So there's some cool things you can do with it. I feel like honestly it's probably like a C tier mon as well. I'd probably put it C over Soul just because like it's the only way you can run Psy Spam in this format pretty much. So it kind of enables like a whole archetype to at least exist, but it wouldn't be something I'd expect to see very often. Zacian's also B tier restricted. I'd probably put it like either a little bit below or above. Rayquaza and Groudon. Actually, Rayquaza should be higher than Groudon, I think, for sure. Because Groudon's kind of underperformed. No, Ray's probably below Groudon, but I think Zacian is definitely above Groudon. Zacian might actually end up being above. No, it's probably fair. I think Zacian is like not near as good as it was in the previous gens. Like in Sword and Shield, like the fact that it could counter the main mechanic Dynamax was really good, and the fact that it had like a constant Intrepid Sword boost was really good. But they nerfed the hell out of this thing, right? They lowered its attack, which kind of sucked, and then also too they took away the Intrepid Sword boosting every time you switch in. So it's not really great for it, right? They kind of just nerfed the Pokemon into Oblivion, or at least into B tier from S tier. So yeah, regularization form, don't use that. Regular Zamazenta form, don't use that. Zamazenta. So in my opinion, actually, this wouldn't have been something I'd have put on the tier list before. Now, but with the context of the format, I think Zamazenta is actually an A tier mon, and I'll explain why. So across the board, it actually has insanely good restricted matchups. It matches up hella well into Pagos, and it matches up like insanely well into Ice Rider. It's okay into Calyrex as long as you have hate for Calyrex on the team. And then it's actually pretty decent into Kyogre, right? It's good into a lot of the restricteds, like the random ones. Like it can just body press through all of them. And also like body press one shots instant if you train your Zama correctly. And that's huge. And also Iron Defense body press Zama is insanely annoying. So I actually think this Pokemon has a lot of potential. I think Zamazenta, ironically, has overtaken Zacian. And like when last format or like last in Sword and Shield, I guess it was basically like way worse than Zacian. Like there was literally no reason to use Zamazenta. Like it didn't have body press, it had nothing that made it good. Now like Zama's actually a really respectable good Pokemon. I think it has really good matchups across the board. Typically they throw like Pelipper on Zamazenta teams to counter Koraidon. So I feel like there's like a lot of tools that this like team can take advantage of. Next up, Eternatus. So Eternatus to me is like a B tier Pokemon, maybe below Rayquaza. And ended up getting second in one of the most recent like bigger grassroots tournaments. It was just a Meteor Beam set, and I actually think it's pretty good like typing wise. Like Dragon and Poison actually is a really good type coverage into a lot of the balance teams right now. And Meteor Beam. Excuse me. A Meteor Beam is also really good at pressuring Incineroars, so you can boost your stats up and then fire off really powerful Sludge Bombs, and you could even tech Flamethrower instead of Dynamax Cannon. So I actually think that's pretty relevant, and there's like a lot that Eternatus can do, to be honest. Yeah, I just think it's like a strong tool. I think that for sure, like it is not a Pokemon that like is able, like you can basically like you can't take it for granted when you see it in team preview. I think the Cosmic Stall sets are like really stupid though, so I probably wouldn't consider those. To be honest, I might put Kyogre in A, by the way, looking at this list, because I do feel like Kyogre is kind of a league above like these guys, just because it has control over the weather. But I do think I want to stress it's like bottom of A, like it's definitely not the top. Like I think Zama is better, but yeah, I think overall it's like pretty good. Calyrex Shadow, Cali Ice. So I'm gonna talk about Cali Ice first. Cali Ice got a huge buff this generation. The fact it can run Clear Amulet and it has Terra, so it can tear out of Will-O-Wisp, and also so it can just like change some of its weaknesses like Terra Water. It can sit in front of a lot of steel types that would normally pressure it, and it's really bulky, so it can Terra and like live some obnoxious things. Like even from Calyrex Shadow Rider, it takes like some ridiculous hits. It can live in Astral Barrage from Specs Cali, which is crazy just with its natural bulk. It's really insane. Like it's just a really strong Pokemon. I think Calyrex Ice also has a lot of depth. I think there's like more ways you can run it. It's also really intuitive to run with balanced Pokemon, which is good for it. And it also like enables like different styles to play. So I feel like Calyrex is actually like a really solid Pokemon. It definitely has a lot of potential. Next one, Calyrex Shadow Rider. Calyrex Shadow Rider, same thing, except the reason why I would put it below Cali Ice right now is because I think it's a little bit less spammable and threatening. What Cali Ice has as an edge over Calyrex Shadow is the fact that it can go for high horsepowers to pressure Incineroar. Cali Shadow has to play more of a safer game with like Nasty Plot. And like kind of conserving itself from Incineroars, and you have to be very exact with how you're positioning it. Also, I'd say Calyrex Shadow is more so like neutral across the board versus most restricted. So like it's like pretty good into, well, it can be good into this outside of Trick Room, but like to be honest, like this in Trick Room's really bad for it. It's okay into Koraidon. It's good into like these guys. Like it's like neutral. Into Pagos, it's at a bit of a disadvantage, and then into everything else, it just kind of farms them. So Cali Shadow's like the perfect neutral Pokemon. Like I think it's like the perfect balance type Pokemon, right? Whereas like Cali Ice, you can lean more into its tools and it's a bit more broken aggressively. I also think too that one thing that Cali Ice has that's really nice that Calyrex Shadow doesn't is that bulk. That bulk and being able to stay alive is huge. Even though Calyrex has a speed to outspeed a lot of Pokemon in the metagame, and like it can go for plot, it can like boost itself, it's still lacking like a little bit of pressure on certain threats in the metagame. Like ice and ground coverage pressures so many Pokemon, and the fact you can't get intimidated, huge. You can't get parting shotted, huge. Calyrex susceptible to those lines of play. It's immune to fake out, which is nice, but you have to play it very safe, right? In some cases, we have to be very smart with it. So I feel like for that reason, like Calyrex Ice gets to be a bit higher just because it gets to play a bit more aggressively. It also won a giant tournament in Victory Road undefeated, and then it didn't perform as well in the other tournament that I played. I got second with Cali Shadow, so that's why I definitely think like the Mon's really good and deserves a good placement. But I feel like this is a pretty reasonable list, right? Now, overall, like I do want to clarify too that like realistically the list is only 100% ordered based on like the top 3 categories, obviously, because like those are the 3 that are most relevant for competitive play. The rest obviously are relevant too. It's just that more so like I haven't played with these as much specifically, but I've obviously seen a lot from these guys, right? So I can kind of give you a bit more insight there. But yeah, to clarify, like B tier, I think it's like pretty good. Like it's usable, right? It's just, it has like flaws. I think Groudon kind of is just like worse, but like it's just still good enough with what it has, where it's like not bad enough to warrant like putting it in C tier, but it's kind of dangling towards the edge, kind of like Eternatus and Rayquaza. A tier is like, yeah, these are like common Pokemon. Like you should be building around these, or like you can be building around these pretty consistently, and like they're good. They're good into the metagame, right? And then S is like, these are just like really insanely good Pokemon. Like if you can play good Pokemon, like you can do well with these guys, right? I do feel like for sure that one thing I could definitely see shifting, to be honest, is having maybe Koraidon over the Pagos. It kind of depends on how the meta progresses. But Pagos is a really good Pokemon. I do think it kind of hasn't been fully discovered how you need to be playing that Pokemon. So there might be a bit more there, right? But overall, hope you guys enjoyed this tier list. Let me know your thoughts in the comments if you guys agree or disagree with me. And I'll see you guys on the next video. We'll be talking about the metagame and what to expect going into the next regional. Thank you guys. Appreciate it. Catch y'all later. Peace.